Hello, Fahad. Thank you so
Hi.
much for coming and talking to BPF. Can you share your journey into architecture? What initially inspired you to pursue this field?
It was kind of accidental. When I was in school, I was kind of quite interested in art, but I was also kind of good at English and a bit academic as well. I think it's kind of quite a common thing that if you're interested in art and sort of other stuff, you get pushed to architecture as a thing that's sort of practical but also creative. My art teacher also had influence in me. He showed me kind of early kind of postmodernism and deconstructivist architecture and showed me how kind of buildings could relate to what was happening in the art world too. So yeah, it was kind of accidental, but kind of through an interest in art, I suppose.
And then what led you to establish Wadhal? And what was your vision behind creating your own firm?
I'd worked at a series of sort of design-led practices across the UK, and I think it often happens to people. I was getting to a stage where I kind of felt confident enough to be able to do it autonomously. So there was that. But the other thing, I suppose, was I was quite interested in ideas around heritage and identity, and I wasn't necessarily able to explore that in my education or working at other practices. So it was also a chance to get into some of those themes, I suppose.
And how would you describe Wadhal's design philosophy?
Um, I don't know if it's that easy to describe. I think one thing that's quite important for us is we always start from first principles. So each project ends up being unique and different. So we don't come with a kind of preconceived style or a preconceived idea of how things should be and impose it on a client or a site. We do look at each thing at its own merits, I suppose. So that's why all of our projects, there isn't necessarily something stitching them together, which I worry about sometimes. But I think that's a pretty good thing. It probably shows that we're kind of doing our job reasonably well.
How has your Pakistani heritage shaped your approach towards architecture and design? Does that set you apart? Does it set apart?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, we talk about kind of heritage as part of our practice kind of branding, but we also really get into our clients' heritage because it's not just about being interested in that for myself, but also really digging into, where people come from. And I think we're really interested in that idea that you can take two radically different contexts, and when they collide, you kind of end up with new solutions. So it does have an impact for sure. Yeah, I don't know if that's answered the question.
No, that's fine. Because my last bit, which I muffled completely, was does that set your firm apart from the rest of the firms? That heritage.
Yeah, I think so. I think it does help. Like to be honest with you, you'd think that. I actually thought the fact that the practice is called Wadhal and so on, and really leaning into that heritage piece, I thought, well, maybe that won't relate to a kind of wide range of people. And I was actually afraid it might be off-putting, but I found the opposite. Got pigeons flying over. I found the opposite. It's probably warmed people to us as a practice because you are what you are. So, it's nice to be kind of honest about that, but also lean into that a little bit.
Now, sustainability is like a growing focus in architecture. How do you integrate that into your projects?
In various ways. I think we're really interested in kind of bioclimatic architecture. So, in other words, using things that are available for free, such as sunlight or wind, to kind of passively heat and cool buildings and so on. So, thereby reducing kind of heating and cooling loads over the lifetime of a building. I think sometimes with that kind of dialogue around sustainability, there's a lot of focus on materials and embodied carbon, which is so important, but that's not the be-all and end-all. And particularly, not to get boring, but with the way building regulations are for new build projects, inevitably we end up having some form of renewables, whether that's air source heat pumps or solar panels and so on. But I think our approach is to kind of not be so technological about it, but be a bit more manual and passive about it, I suppose. I think we understand, and you see that in vernacular architecture, a lot about how climate works with buildings, and sometimes it's actually tapping back into that more ancient knowledge as opposed to finding the newest technology.
Have you faced any challenges as a British Pakistani architect and business owner in London?
I don't think so, actually. I don't think so. I've definitely faced challenges as a business owner because, it's hard to start something from nothing, and anyone running a business will tell you it comes with its challenges and stresses. but not as a consequence of being British Pakistani. I mean, kind of what I would say is, what I was saying earlier is, when you're in architectural education, you definitely have to kind of prescribe to certain Western movements in architecture. Well, certainly that's the way I felt, and I know education has changed a lot since then. So I would say that was a challenge, and then I've kind of responded to that in my practice somewhat. But I felt like where I came from, there wasn't always the space to talk about that in the kind of classy world of architecture or art or whatever, you know.
So can you share a project you're particularly proud of and what made it special for you?
We're proud of all of them, well, I guess it's maybe the newest one is always the one that's easiest to talk about, I suppose. We're finishing a new build house at the moment in West London. That was kind of quite interesting because it was really challenging. So it was challenging in planning terms. We were up against a really challenging budget. And often when we do projects, we're dealing with a kind of private residential client who will invest a lot of time and money and energy into it. But this was a developer, so it felt like kind of all the cards were stacked against us. So to be able to kind of deliver an architecturally interesting project within all those constraints has felt special.
In the coming years, how do you see the role of architecture evolve?
Oh God, it's such a big question. I think it's challenging. I think the kind of technological revolution has changed how we all live and how we spend our time. And I think that means that, you know, most of us are spending our time in digital space, looking at our screens and so on, and not necessarily so aware of physical spaces. So I think that's a challenge that young architects have to respond to. So there's kind of this idea of, well, the value of it is diminishing, but on the other hand, it's growing ever more important as well. And you see that even during COVID, where your home isn't just somewhere where you kind of live and cook and so on. It's also now a workspace, and it's also where you're spending most of your time. So that actually increases the demands on a home. So I think it's difficult to predict exactly, but I think it's ever evolving in relation to our demands for buildings, but also the way we live changing quite quickly with technological advancements.
What advice would you give young British Pakistanis looking to enter into this field of architecture?
I would say, well, you have to be passionate about it. So you definitely have to be interested in it. I think it's a difficult field if you don't have a passion for it. If you do have a passion for it, it's a very rewarding and easy field in a way. So I would say, yeah, that's the main thing, is you do have to be really passionate about it because it's challenging. Yeah.
So what's next for you and Wadhal? Any exciting projects in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Yeah, we've got a few projects. So we're finishing a new build home in West London that I mentioned. We have a project in Stoke Newington with a kind of private art gallery that will be finishing in the coming months, that I've been working on for a few years. We have another project going on site soon in East London, among others at lots of different stages. So we're busy, but I guess our target for this year is to try and get a few more commercial projects as well. We would love to do a shop. So if there's any kind of interesting shop owners listening, we'll design a beautiful shop for you.
So then I'll have to ask this question: are you ready to offer them free advice and free consultation?
Oh, for sure, yeah. We always talk to anyone. But yeah, no. I mean, I was saying this earlier. We would love to have more Pakistani clients. You would think we have loads, but we've only had one or two actually. So yeah, that's why I'm here. I guess I want to engage a bit more with the Pakistani community, and also get them excited about architecture as well.
Of course. Thank you so much, Fahad, for coming and speaking to BPF. I hope you have best of luck with everything that you're going to put your hands on.
You too. Thank you so much.